please stand and for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance
To the
To the
flag
flag of the
of the
of the
United
United States
States of
of
America,
America and to the
to the
republic
republic for which
which it stands,
stands
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
and
and
justice
justice
for
for
all.
all.
for all.
Okay, next we go on to changes to the agenda.
All right, the changes I have, number 13 is going to be removed, and number 14 will be removed, and we will come back with those at another date. That's all I have. I don't know if the other, and to need the executive session, let's add to the executive session, insurance settlement, Harper and Sweat versus Town of Newburgh. So that's going to be an executive session item. And then we will go in executive session, but we will then come out. If we're going to vote on something, we will do it on Zoom. So those of you, if we go in executive session, just hang out a little bit because we'll be back again. So that's it for me, Joe. Any other board members with anything?
I have nothing.
I don't have anything.
Okay, very good. Next we go on to approval of audit.
All right, so we're looking for a motion to approve this audit in the amount of $602,170.85. Someone want to make that motion?
So move.
I'll
Second,
second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Okay, next we go on to item 6 for accounting, a budget transfer.
All right, this is from our town accountant, Ron Klum, and he is suggesting this transfer of $18,790 from the contingency fund to the building and grounds for town hall. So someone want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second your motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 7, payment of annual police software maintenance.
All right, this is software that's used by our police department. It's Impact software, as it's called. And there's a maintenance agreement on that software, and that's $21,985. And that's with Central Square Technologies, and it's in the police budget under account 3010.497. So if someone wants to make that motion?
I'll make
I'll
the
make
motion.
the motion.
Councilman Manley, you made that motion, sir?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I need a second, please.
Go ahead, Paul.
Second it.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 8, which is a resolution for retirement system reporting for elected officials.
All right, so in order for elected officials to be in the retirement system, they must prove the hours that they actually work on an average. And those hours are posted. And this resolution puts down what each councilman and supervisor, town clerk, the hours that they work. The resolution's approved by the town board, then it's put on the internet and it's posted in town hall for 30 days before it comes down and is actually sent to the retirement system. So does someone want to make a motion to approve this resolution as presented?
So move.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 9 for the assessor, solar and wind energy tax exemption.
Okay, on this one, I think I'm going to ask Mark Taylor, and we've been working on this for some time. It has to deal with assessments and solar farms and whatnot. I think we're coming close to a final version on this. It's about the third time it's been before the board, so this would be the time for questions or anything. So Mark, I could ask you to step in here.
Sure. As the board recalls, it elected to proceed with an option in which pilot payment requirements were imposed with respect to certain solar energy systems. And at the discussion at the board's work session, we addressed the potential for excluding those systems which serve residential properties, as well as on-site systems which serve commercial properties. And basically, we had discussed the standard of 1 megawatt as being the trigger for a pilot requirement for those properties which are otherwise exempt from real property taxation, those solar facilities which are otherwise exempt. So state law provides for an exemption. You can exempt out from it, or you can impose a pilot requirement, and the board decided to proceed with imposing a pilot on larger facilities, essentially. And as I discussed with the supervisor today, the 1 megawatt, I've read at least that equals approximately 2 acres of solar panels. So it's a relatively large break-off point for when you would subject a solar facility to a pilot requirement, as opposed to when you wouldn't, at least under this draft. You can always decide to bring that down somewhat if you so choose. So basically, the local law would require those solar facilities that are proposed that are larger than 1 megawatt enter into a pilot agreement with the town, pursuant to which the owners would pay an annual pilot payment. And following the NYSERDA, New York State Energy Council's guidance, we're providing for a pilot payment that is calculated based on the capacity of the solar facility to produce energy. And that's tied to the megawatts that it can produce. So if it's 10 acres, basically that would mean 4 megawatts of, not 5, my multiplication is a little bit off. 5 megawatts of energy it had the capacity to produce, and your pilot payment would be calculated based on those 5 megawatts. And in this draft, we've left that number blank. Under the NYSERDA guidance for Central Hudson region, and by the way, there are a couple of pages missing from the printed package, so hopefully Joe was able to get you the full local law before the meeting. But under the NYSERDA's guidance, they've given a range for Central Hudson region of between 2,600 and 7,600 per year per megawatt as what they view as a range of what would be appropriate in a pilot required agreement as far as the annual fee goes. I've also left blank provision for a percentage increase from the base amount over each year. I would suggest 2%, but you could make it 2%, the higher of 2% or the CPI or something along those lines if you preferred. And just as a guard against inflation and higher interest rates in the future. And also, I've left blank the penalty provision for late payments in this draft. My suggestion would be
All right.
so.
I'm sorry, Mark. I thought you were finished. You took a breath and I thought
No,
you were
no.
finished. Okay.
I was just winding up, but that's fine. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Thank you. So I don't know if the board members have any questions right now, or you'll have time to study it over before we bring it back again. I think it seemed to me that the board is really trying to not charge the homeowner for solar, but that's our motive here. And I think hopefully we'll be able to accomplish it. Is that correct, board?
That's correct.
Correct.
Okay. So with that, Joseph, maybe we can move on then.
Very good. We'll move on to item 10 for zoning, East Colden Park overlay presentation.
Okay, and on this one, we got both doses here, father and son, I believe. So Bobby, I hope you got them that we can hear them. And they're going to give us a short, well, I would say short presentation, but do whatever you have to do and let the board hear it, and we'll see where to go from there. So go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Vince Dosey. Very quickly, on the Zoom hookup are the principals of the project, David Aziza and Carl Kaplan. Darren Dosey, who has done most of the conceptual planning, and Andrew Featherston, I believe, is on somewhere. He is with Mazer, and he will pick up the engineering with us after Darren and I are finished with the conceptual site plan. The subject of today's meeting is East Coldenham Park. It's a 28.9 acre parcel westerly and northerly of Colden Park, across from East Coldenham School, easterly of Holiday Park, and southeasterly across Route 17K from Fleetwood. We were introduced to the project a couple of years ago when we reviewed the parcel, made a use due diligence study for a marketing firm, and the parcel was zoned R1. My suggestions at the time was that R1 was not the best use of the property, and that the project is strategically located along 17K, very close to I-84. And it's primarily a commercial area along 17K with modules of residential modules a short distance from 17K, such as Fleetwood, Colden Park. Now, I had reported at that time that I thought the property should provide a more substantial property tax base, and that the property should not clash with, but should serve the immediate area and serve their community needs. I suggested that at that time that they look into something which previously was referred to somewhat of a town center concept, which is now morphed into being a hamlet concept. I did say at the time that I was involved as a consultant for the town of Newburgh, reviewing projects as liaison during the late 80s, 90s, into 2000. One of the projects that came before us was the Newburgh Town Center. At that time, I recommended a true town center concept, which would be two-story, mixed use, and that it would get a better bang for the buck on taxes, and would consolidate development in the central location. It didn't quite work for the Newburgh Town Center because the new town center was at 300 in Meadow Hill Road, and it was sort of a bit dwarfed by the Newburgh Mall. But the concept carried on in discussions for several years, and then through the 2005 master plan, the concept was reintroduced as hamlet zoning. And it was specifically mentioned that Route 17K in the area that this parcel is located was a prime area for hamlet zoning. And it met all the conditions, this parcel met all the conditions that were requisite for hamlet zoning, and it seemed an ideal suggestion. Now, the owners of the property, then my work was terminated, and they went on and had some meetings with the town that finally stalled for one reason or another. Now, some very quick arguments for this location are classic for hamlet zoning. The predecessor of it, Newburgh Town Center zoning, was somewhat of the same requisites. The property serves several residential needs as dictated by the master plan. It has these modules of Colden Park, Meadow Hill, Fleetwood, Drury Heights, all located in that area. And it's at the gateway to the town. It's in a position to set flavor for development for the town. It provides property as well as the mixed residential commercial use. It provides lands that the owner of the property can make available in the way of a pocket park, passive recreation, community center, right to the rear of the development, the proposed developed area, and right adjacent to Colden Park. It also has one of the requisites that it be close to a school of some nature, and that it tie together existing strip malls, strip zoning and offices in the area. It's also very close to I-84, within 3/4 mile in one direction, maybe 6/10 in another direction. And it would afford the real intention of hamlet zoning. It will pull together disparate, disjointed use in the area into something centering around a common theme. Has adjacent available land that can be built into this new town center concept across the street. And it has another important thing, that there are some parcels in the property where the buildings, the use is outdated, outmoded, and are in decline. As the hamlet zoning takes hold, those pieces will have some revitalization because it'll attract interest to upgrading those parcels of property. As I said before, the applicant approached the town and the project stalled. I was called and asked to see if I could revise the project based on my previous review. And I approached the town, met with several proposals and discussed them with the town over the past 6 months or so. And it was a good give and take conversations that the town expressed their concerns, and we proposed several proposals. Now, an understanding that became immediately obvious was that the town wanted to protect the area and did not want heavy development of the parcels adjacent to Colden Park, and asked if there was some way that that land could be held from any further development. Now, the total property parcel is 28.9 acres. The usable area is about 21.6 acres. When I say usable, there are some wetlands and there are some slopes that are not severe, but I would not like to see developed in any way. And that usable area of 21.6 acres, we held as the core of the parcel. The next thought we gave to was we addressed the centerpiece retail component. And one is it provides the ratables. It also would give identity to that area if it was developed properly and with a certain theme. And this parcel would also serve the adjacent residential areas and pull together, as I said before, the disparate use in the area. We tried to picture what would be a substantial and enough development, and ultimately we came to 50,000 square feet. In fact, ultimately it was 50,350 square feet. Now, based on the building coverage regulations in the town of Newburgh zoning, that would require certain area to be designated or at least in the calculations to be designated for the business use. Now, if it was done under the B zone, it would allow strip malls, mini malls, or retail space at a rate of 40% coverage. So 40% times 50,350. The coverage would require 2.9 acres. If it were done under a more restrictive zoning of, say, shopping center, which of course is not a shopping center, but we said, okay, let's look at it. If it were a shopping center, then it would be 30% ground coverage for building ground coverage, and that would eliminate 3.85 acres. Very quickly, the density calculations came out to be, in the first case, if it were mini mall type of zoning, business zoning, if we took the 21.56 acres of usable land, removed 2.9 acres, we came with 18.67 acres. And just based on a density calculation of 6 units per acre for a multi-use address, you'd come up with about 112 units. If you removed the 3.85 acres instead of the 2.89, and handled it as if it were a shopping center. As I said, it wasn't, but if we address it in that case, it would be more restrictive. You'd end up with less units. You'd have 17.7 acres, 6 per acre would give you about 106 units. Now, that is just what we've done in the town a number of times just to get the project off the ground to see where it might be going. I met with the town and I had suggested somewhere, I was looking for somewhere around 90 units, frankly. I came in and showed what 106 units would do, and I showed what 112 units would do. Now, previously, when this came in some time back for a multi-use address, they had 138 units. I guess it was some 15 years ago, they were proposing like 138 units. Now, when we were discussing with the town, they felt that these number of units would be not something they were looking for. They asked me if we could bring it back to a number of units that was comfortable for the town and that they thought might be comfortable for the area. So we did go in with 90 units, and they still had some concern about that. We went in with 82 units. Finally, I said, well, look, and you have a plan there, I believe, before you, which I said, we will show you a plan that absolutely works here, and it meets all the conditions of your own master plan. And we will show you how an area could be designated for the business, and we'll eliminate that area from the computations for the residential portion completely. Now, it's just a way of doing it, a broad way of addressing it. Because keep in mind, what we're contemplating there is a multi-resident component of a building, commercial area, 50,300 square feet, with true hamlet zoning with residential over the commercial, over the business portion. Now, we laid it out that, and that's the plan we have here. Now, that's a concept plan. Doesn't mean it's going to be built that way, but it shows what definitely can be done with little problem or no problem under the existing master plan and under what would be the proposed zoning. Now, doing that, because we have residential over the commercial, we had to do other landscaping, we had to provide drives and parking. So the commercial area was not 3.89 acres or 4 acres. It actually, to be comfortable there, came out to be 8.87 acres. Now, that's treating the site plan application fairly harshly. It's being very restrictive, and it allows a much lighter density. It actually comes into, we would then have 12.69 acres of land that we would designate for the residential, and at 6 per acre, it came to 76 units. And that's what you have before. You have 76 units, 30 in a residential multi-building, and 40 units over the commercial, over the business area.
Les, I mean, Vincent, I don't want to cut you off, but I think I could sum it up here, because I think you're really asking the town board to make an overlay on this property, which is,
That's correct.
which would include a mixed use, of which you're proposing 76 units, way down from any proposals we had in the past, and perhaps 50,000 square feet of retail. And I think there was a proposal with land behind it would be gifted to the town, perhaps,
Yes.
which would limit every development forever behind it. Yes?
Everything from that line on your plan that shows the rear of the development, everything back would be dedicated to the town for passive recreation. If you want to have a senior center or a community center there, anything there that would enhance the Colden Park Wood area would be dedicated to the town. And this would then be, all of the development would be in the front area as we were requesting.
Okay. I don't know if the board members have any questions right now. We do have a diagram before us, whatever.
I don't have a diagram before me. I have nothing.
Okay. There's a diagram right in here. I'll give you one. We have one for everyone. It was on the, in fact, we laid it, I had it on the conference desk there for the longest time laid out. But we will definitely get you a plan for everyone to look at. And these meetings are nice, but they're not so nice because they're not very personal. Like, let me see the diagram, you know? So we will, the board members will look at that unless they have an immediate questions right now, either Paul or Scott, I don't know. And hearing none, I think what we'll do, Vince, go ahead.
I would like to see an informational meeting for the area on this, if this does move forward beforehand. We have a lot of residential homes in that area that probably would be on what is actually going to go in there. Because a lot of
If I
people don't follow
Right.
the
No.
meeting.
Well, let me say is, I'd be the first to propose that also. I just want
I
to make sure.
agree wholeheartedly on that.
Okay.
If I could just mention, that was definitely what we planned to do. And under your master plan, that's a suggested procedure that you get input from the area. So we felt that would be requisite. We thought what we've done today plus tonight's meeting would set us up that the board could feel comfortable. Then they would direct us to meet with the area. We'd come back and report our
Well,
discussions. with
okay.
the
No,
town.
you're not, but when you have that meeting, we will have a board member or two at that also to actually hear from the residents. But this is like a difficult time to do any kind of meetings right now, but that has to be done. And I think what we'll do is send you a letter, Vince, suggesting that. I just wanted to make sure the board was all right with the plan as is, with the 76 units and the 50,000 square retail. And if we are at least to the point you want to hear what the neighbors have to say, then that'll be our next step, I think.
If I could just interject again, a way of doing this very quickly is that we've had these meetings, the board feels comfortable. They just say, they issue an intent that we would like you to proceed on with this, meet with the neighborhoods, come back and meet with our attorney in most cases to discuss the, which we have many suggestions, to discuss the actual local law that you would implement. So we feel we're at that point. All we need is your acknowledgement, you just mentioned, that the board feels comfortable that we proceed on to the next step.
Okay.
And this, you're not approving anything, you're just approving, indicating acceptance of this type of proposal for that area in accordance with your master plan.
All right, Vince. So we'll get back to you in the near future. All right. Thank you.
All right, can I get my
All right.
building permits tomorrow?
Come in now. I'll give it to you.
Okay. All right,
Okay.
thank you very
Vince. Okay.
Okay, next we
All
go
right,
on.
Joseph.
Next, we go on to item 11, Leslie Road, 3 lots on a common drive.
Okay, and now, and this one's been before us before, and there was some confusion because there seemed to be more than just 3 lots. There was a stone path, a gravel path, and I'm going to let Scott Manley maybe say a few words about this one. Scott?
Let's turn your mic on, Scott.
Hold on.
All right, now we got Scott. Go ahead, Scott.
Anyways, the first time I went up there, it appeared there was already 4 driveways, and they were going to make a 5th, even though they requested 3. I went back up there with Jerry Canfield, and one of the 4 that are there now, we went to the other side, which looked like an exit to a Happy Acres Apartments. And on the Happy Acres side, there is dirt mounds. Hopefully, they're going to keep them there, so there is no access. But according to Jerry and the way the town code is, the very large gravel driveway going to the back of the Donnelly house is considered a driveway. I think, Russ, you said in an email the next day, you'd be fine with them blocking that off for us to approve.
Yes, good evening, Ross. I'm on the online here. Lou Donnelly is also online, AKA Christina.
That's me.
Yes, Lou indicated that if you considered that driveway, he would block that off so that that wouldn't have access onto Faulty Drive.
I brought Jerry up there and had him, check the town code, and that's what he explained to me.
Okay. So how about somebody could make a motion to approve this 3 lots on a common drive on Leslie Road with the provision that they will block off that stone driveway or whatever. Does that sound good? So someone to make that motion?
With that, I would make that motion.
Okay. And
Anyone seconded that motion?
I'll second it.
Motion seconded by Councilman Ruggiero. Any further discussion?
Yes, I have a question. Have you contacted the local fire department on this 3-lot driveway to make sure on size and width that a fire truck can get in and out?
I think, but that one, Scott, I think we did contact, yes?
Yeah, we have a written letter that Ross gave us from Lee Slaughter.
Okay,
The whole-
thank you.
Okay, so we got a motion and a second. Can we vote the motion then, Joseph?
Certainly. Mrs. Green,
Yes,
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Okay, next we go on to item 12.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next we go on to item 12, code compliance. Item A, the cell facility consulting contract.
All right, so this is I'm gonna have board approval so I can sign a contract with a cell phone expert or whatever. Mark, do you want to add anything to this?
Sure, we used GHD, Mike Musso, for quite a while. Basically, his firm has presented a new master contract format, which I've reviewed and have no issues with. As he receives work assignments from code compliance to review permit applications, there'll be a separate sheet that's signed that covers each of those assignments.
All right, so with that, does someone want to make a motion so I could sign this contract, GHD?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second your motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes,
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 12B, approval to implement credit card payments.
All right, and this is a request from our code compliance department to use so they'll be able to take credit cards at code compliance. And this is with a merchant application that I will sign with board approval, and it's with Fonte or Forte. And we're already using them in the clerk's office right now, the same processor. So someone want to make a motion that we can go ahead with the credit cards, and that'll be run by, of course, the town attorney also.
so move.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes,
Mr. Ruggiero,
yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 15, Community Day postponement.
Okay. With these times, I don't think there's need much of an explanation. Unfortunately, hopefully we're gonna make a motion to postpone both Community Day and the fireworks until further notice. I'm not saying it's over. Maybe we can still get it in before the summer's over. But for now, the motion is going to be to actually, so we're saying no until further notice on the fireworks and Community Day.
so move.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes,
Mr. Ruggiero,
yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Next, we go on to item 16, Recreation Department personnel change.
All right. So on this one, Charlene Black, our personnel person, and Jim Prasuti, our Commissioner of Parks. This is a personnel change for Anthony Sal Lamacchia. Now, Anthony was a chauffeur. Not that he chauffeured us around, but a chauffeur is a bus driver in this town, is what the civil service is. So he no longer wants to drive a bus, so we're going to make him, he's going to work at the guard shack and greet visitors that way. So his current salary of $18.45 as a driver will be dropped down to $13.50 per hour because he will work at the guard shack. So does someone want to make that motion?
I'll make them.
go ahead, Scott.
Motion made by Councilman Manley. Do I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
yes,
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes,
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Okay, next we go on to executive session, retirement of current employee and matters leading to the return of that individual as a part-time employee and an insurance settlement.
And that
Do I have a
insurance settle,
motion?
okay,
Do I
that
have a
insurance
motion?
settlement, that insurance settlement is Harper and Sweat versus the town of Newburgh. So we're going to actually go into executive session, but don't leave, because we will leave shortly for another room. Then we will come back. And if we do vote on anything that was discussed in the executive session, we will do it at open floor when we come out. So just stand by. Hopefully it'll be only 10 minutes or so, hopefully. So if someone want to make that motion, go to executive session.
So move.
Do I have a second, please?
I'll second.
A motion made and seconded to go into executive session at 7:43.
Thank you, everyone. We'll be back. All right, Joe, is Paul here and Scott here?
I'm here.
Okay, we're on item 17. Mr. Supervisor, please ask for a motion to come out of executive session, please.
So move.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded to come out of executive session at 8:05 PM. Mr. Supervisor, was any action taken during the executive session?
No, it wasn't. And I think we need to vote coming out of executive session too.
Yes, thank you. Coming out of executive session, please. Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Is Paul unmuted?
Yeah, I don't see him up here at all.
He's unmuted. Paul, can you hear us?
He's not muted.
I will call him right now.
Can you text him? Could you text him, please?
Hear that right?
Scott?
Yeah, last
He
time
may-
he went through
He
my.
may have to leave the meeting and re-enter. He might have to.
Okay, he has no volume. He's on my speakerphone now.
Here we go again. Okay.
We're
So,
voting right now for coming out. Betty made the motion, I seconded it, and it's up to you on voting now.
Yes.
okay, and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes.
Mr. Manley.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Supervisor, was any action taken during the executive session?
No, there was no action taken.
Thank you. Mr. Supervisor, is there any action taken now?
Yes, there is. And the first, hopefully it'll result in a motion, but we're going to accept the resignation of town engineer James Osborne. And that's effective July 17th, 2020. He will resign for his retirement. Someone want to make that motion?
So move.
I'll second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes. The next motion we're looking for is to hire James Osborne as a part-time engineer, returning to the town at a rate of $60 per hour, and that will be in accordance with the New York State retirement system with a starting date of July 27th, 2020.
I'll make that.
Someone wanna
Councilman Manley, you made that motion, please?
Yes, sir.
Do I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes. And there'll be a third motion. This one will be to settle a lawsuit of Harper and Sweet versus the town of Newburgh per the insurance company's recommendation to settle the suit for $25,000 town's cost. Someone want to make that motion?
So move.
May I have a second, please?
Paul also made the motion, if you want to give him a second.
Okay, let Paul have the motion then.
Okay,
I couldn't-
understood.
I couldn't.
Councilman Ruggiero made the motion. Do I have a second, please?
I'll second then.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Mrs. Green,
Yes,
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes. Now I think someone will make a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second, please?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn at 8:10 PM. Mrs. Green,
yes.
Mr. Ruggiero,
Yes.
Mr. Manley,
Yes.
and Mr. Piaquadio.
Yes, and thank you everyone for joining us. Hopefully someday soon we'll be able to get together in person. But everyone, please stay safe and stay well. Good night.
Good night.